Hey, thanks for coming by and checking out the journey of this table. A couple months ago, a friend of mine gave me these 8x8 pillars that he had found on a job site. The first one I turned into this bookshelf, and I thought that turned out pretty cool. But I wanted to try to take one of the shorter ones and turn it into a little coffee table, coffee stand, maybe an end table of sorts. And I knew I was going to have to do a lot of work to it. I had to fill it up with some epoxy, cut off the ends that just wouldn't make sense, and then have to rip it down. And that was going to be a lot of work. And after I did all that, to be honest with you, at a couple places in this journey, I got a little discouraged because I thought, A, the wood was pretty beat up, and I didn't think it's going to really look good. And then B, there was some moments there where I thought, man, I could have saved myself a lot of struggle and just gone to, the big box store and picked up some 2x8s and just call it good. But as I was moving forward and planing things down, I started to see some character come out from the knots in the wood, maybe some of the cracks. There was some big bolt holes that I think this came off a staircase or maybe a deck. And they had to drill some big bolt holes through those. And I think as I started to see the character come out, I started to get excited. And right here, after I glued them all together, which for some reason I didn't catch any video of me doing a glue up, but after it started to come together, I was at this point where I started to go, this could be actually pretty cool. So I planed it down and cleaned up the rough edges, cut off the parts that just weren't going to work, and started to get a little excited about what was to come. So after I did all this, I thought, I'm going to set this to the side and I'm going to work on the legs. What I did for the legs was got a 4x4, I want to say it was 10 foot, and cut it down to size. I know at this point some of you guys are going, man, get a bigger saw, and you're not wrong. I think I will. And yes, I know it's Ryobi, but whatever, man, it cuts. So I cut these down to size, and I went looking on YouTube to discover or maybe come up with some different kind of legs. And what I'm realizing as a amateur wannabe woodworker is it has a lot to do with skill. You gotta know what you're doing and how to make cuts and things like that. But it's also probably much more about design. And there are those who, and I probably am one of those who would fall into that category, who over design or want to put too much. And so, for example, you have a really fancy tabletop and then some really fancy table legs, and it just gets too busy. And what I've discovered is that if you have a simple tabletop, then maybe have some unique legs, or vice versa. If you have a really fancy tabletop, maybe have some very simple legs, so that there's not too much going on and your eye's not drawn away to too many different things. And so I knew the tabletop would have some unique features, but it wasn't going to be super busy. So I wanted the legs to stand out. I wanted the legs to have some kind of unique feature to them. And I practiced on a bunch of different scrap wood to come up with different designs. And I came up with this, and I was, after struggling putting it together, I think the design turned out pretty cool. I didn't want it to be too busy, but also I wanted to have a unique feature to it. And I think in the end it came out all right. And so after some struggle here, as you could tell, I came up with this design. And I thought if I just make 4 of these guys and glue them all up, put them together, I think it'll be all right. So that's what I did. One of the things I enjoy about woodworking is the ability just to create and make something out of nothing. Well, I guess not out of nothing, but to get things that were raw and to create something, hopefully, that people would appreciate and find some beauty in it. There is something unique about getting into the shop, turning on for me, some real chill music, and just start to create. I know there are those who have to draw it out in the beginning and then, work off that sketch. I do a little bit of that, but a lot of it comes as I'm in the shop, just putting things together and seeing where something can go, and then try to make that happen. Sometimes it turns out really nice and sometimes not so much. And like for instance right here, this is where I decided to make the legs run through the table. And I knew I had to make a little generic top, a little faux top, so that there wouldn't be this crazy pattern on top when the legs came through. So I had to figure out a way to attach it to the leg. So all I did was drill some holes and put some dowel rods in there and glue it down, and plenty strong, and it gives me a little lip to put that through and also give me some structure support, because the goal was to have no table skirt, just the legs and the table slab. And I think in the end I hit that mark. Right here I decided to countersink the legs a little, so I had to go back in and cut out this little lip so that the leg would fit down in there, and that way I could put some glue on that and sink that down in there and give me a little bit more stability. I didn't show it, but I did actually finally get around to getting that to fit a little bit better. Right here you can see some of my butchery where I just butchered those things. But what I decided to do is to lean into how bad those gaps are and just make those gaps more of an accent piece, because I obviously didn't cut those out real straight, nice. And then the table broke off, a little corner broke off, and I decided that I was going to try to mix up some brown epoxy, and I didn't have any. I just had this gold stuff, and poured that in there and sealed up that end and made me a little generic corner. And I don't think you're going to be able to tell. You would have to know it's there to find it, and you have to really be looking. The legs were a little pale, so I decided I wanted to darken them up a little bit. And I'm glad I did, because they actually turned out really nice. And this is some kind of walnut stain that I use. It's a gel stain, and I don't know, I just kind of like the gel stains myself. And I think they give it a nice clean look, and they're easy to work with. So that's what I went with. And then the next part for me was a new skill set that I'm trying to develop, and that's printing or laser engraving. And my cousin bought me this, and I got a long ways to go. I learned that just because you have the printer or the laser standard itself, it doesn't really necessarily mean that it's going to engrave in the center, if that makes any kind of sense. Because if you look close enough, you'll be able to tell that the Texas logo is not quite centered in on the wood. But look, this is the end result of all that work, and I'm very proud of this table. Are there a lot of things wrong and a lot of things that didn't quite go the way I wanted it to go? Of course. But that's okay, because I just think it's cool. And those dark stains on the side, that's two things. That's water stain and also some epoxy that got poured into there. But I tried to clean that water stain up, but it just wasn't going to clean up. So I embraced it. And that's sometimes what we have to do in life, right? Sometimes we got some scars and stains in our life, and we try to cover them up and hide them. But sometimes it's those things that make it beautiful. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the journey. Thanks again. We'll talk to you later.